We have an incredible Conservative team that's ready to unleash the Canadian potential. And that's what I want to talk about today. Lately, our Prime Minister has been doing what he loves most, the two things he loves most. He's been doing a lot of photo ops, and he's been throwing around a lot of other people's money. He's going to these events with large corporations in the manufacturing and mining sector and doing photo ops and claiming that he believes that we should make our own stuff here in Canada, particularly in electric batteries. But this is, of course, a revelation to the rest of us because over 8 years he's achieved almost nothing in bringing it home. I'll give you a first example. Canada ranks 6th in the world for lithium reserves, lithium being probably the most essential mineral to produce batteries. And in the last 2 years on record, we did not produce a tablespoon of lithium here in Canada, even while the production has exploded all around the world. So that means that we import our batteries from countries like China, who burn coal in their production, which kind of defeats the purpose of driving an electric car. And if you burn coal to build the car, then you probably are putting more GHGs into the atmosphere than is your goal. But that has been the Trudeauian policy on mining and manufacturing. Drive up taxes, red tape, and other governmental obstacles to drive production out and pollution up. We see it in our oil and gas sector as well, where we have the third largest reserves of oil anywhere on earth, but we're still importing 130,000 barrels of oil from overseas every single day, from polluting foreign dictators, sending our money to them when we could be keeping it here at home. Or in natural gas, we have the 6th biggest supply of natural gas, 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas right beneath our feet, and we cannot export a single solitary cubic foot of that gas overseas because we do not have liquefaction facilities with which to do it. Not for lack of trying by industry, by the way. When Trudeau took office, 15 proposals for natural gas liquefaction were on his desk. 0 have been built, not one. Meanwhile, the Americans have built 6. The Qataris are selling more of their net liquefied gas. And, you know, Trudeau's been in office for 8 years. 8 years. The Germans built an import facility for natural gas in 194 days. And he hasn't been able to build a single export facility in all those 8 years he's been in office. And what does this mean? It means more coal is being burned in Asia to power their electrical grids that could be powered by Canadian natural gas. It means that the war against Ukraine surges on because Putin is able to raise the war chest by selling his gas into the European market because we're not exporting our gas overseas. The solution is obvious. We've got to knock down his anti-development legislation, speed up approval, so that we can produce more of the gas here in our country. We have the shortest shipping distance to Asia and Europe from North America. We have the cold weather that makes it 25% cheaper to liquefy gas than it does down in the U.S. Gulf Coast. And of course, we have clean hydroelectricity to power our liquefaction facilities, which means we can have the lowest emitting liquefaction processes anywhere on planet Earth. So producing it here reduces global emissions. So I'm going to get rid of Trudeau's anti-development law, C-69. We're going to build liquefaction facilities in Canada. We're going to lower the temperature of that gas to minus 161 degrees Celsius. Turn it into liquid, put it on a ship, send it off to Asia to shut down Asian coal-fired plants, and send it off to Europe to take back the market from Putin and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. The same goes for mining. As I said earlier, we have not produced a single tablespoon of lithium in the previous 2 years that are most recent on record. Finally, some production is starting. Now, up until recently, the only operating mine that was in Canada, in Manitoba, was actually owned by China, which had exclusive rights to take the mineral and process it back in that country, rather than using it for our supply chains here in Canada. But why don't we have more mining? Well, according to Trudeau's own government, it takes up to 25 years to get a mine approved in Canada. That's right on their website. It's not my opinion. 5 to 25 years to get a mine approved. So if you're an investor, where are you going to invest? In the already risky game of searching around for minerals that may or may not be beneath the ground. A risky proposition from the outset. Why would you add the risk that you might wait around 25 years for a maybe or a no, when you can go to other countries where you can get an answer within 18 months? Well, the answer is you wouldn't, and that's why increasingly the money is leaving our money is leaving our country. 10 years ago, we had $22 billion of annual mining investment. Last year, we had $14 billion, and that does not even account for inflation. It's even worse than that if you turn it into real dollars. And it is no wonder. That is true across our economy. Canadians invest $800 billion more in the rest of the world, and the world invests in us because money goes where it can get a return on investment. And why are the delays so long? Well, Bill C-69 has introduced countless new processes, political instability, and new concepts that no one can even make sense of. And for example, the companies are now expected to do some sort of a gender-based analysis of every single mining project. Now, Trudeau was unable to explain until he went down to South America for a conference what that meant. And then he revealed it. He said that mines bring men to communities, and men bring social problems. So hardworking, blue-collar men are the problem, and that's why companies need to make sure there are not too many men going to towns when mines open up. Can you imagine an investor looking at that criteria, trying to figure out how to properly fill out the application to get it approved when you introduce that kind of woke nonsense and political discretion into the process? We need to create more paychecks for women and men. Every single Canadian deserves a bigger and more powerful paycheck, and we shouldn't be dividing people on identity politics to get in the way of these productions and these proposals. So I'm going to repeal C-69, and I'm going to replace it with a new law which consults First Nations, protects the environment, but gets things done in this country. In the words of yes, thank you. In the words of a great Eastern Canadian leader, Bob Stanfield, he said, we have to stop stopping and start starting in this country. That's what we have to do, speed things up so that there is the ability of investors to know what they're facing when they get into these massive and highly risky projects. So what does that mean for our country? We have the minerals that will power the next generation. We're going to have to increase the production of strategic minerals around the world in order to power the electric future. We're going to have to increase it by 6-fold. And the good news is we have most of those minerals here in Canada. We have the lithium, the cobalt, the graphite, the copper, the nickel. And if we can unleash our mining sector, we can produce these things here in Canada, have the shorter shipping distance to our manufacturing facilities, and convert those raw minerals into end products right here in North America. We need to do a number of things to make that happen. One, we need to keep the mineral exploration tax credit in place to continue to incentivize risk-taking and exploration. Two, we need to get rid of the carbon tax and replace it with real incentives that make our industry competitive with the rest of the world. Three, we need to have enough electricity to power our mines. We're going to have to double the electrical production in this country. So what does that mean? In Quebec, it means removing the federal duplication of environmental studies so that we can build more dams in Quebec. We need to build nuclear in the prairies. That means small modular nuclear reactors in Alberta, Saskatchewan, also in New Brunswick, using the technology designed right here in Canada and in particular in Ontario. There is no zero-carbon electrical future without nuclear. And we need to approve nuclear production. And the good news is, speaking of mining, we have the biggest supply of uranium anywhere on planet Earth, right in Saskatchewan and Gary's province. And companies like Cameco, which are leaders in employing First Nations people, can pull it out of the ground and use it to help power a carbon-free upstream production of steam and electricity for the oil sands in that province and, of course, in neighboring Alberta. But we can't take 15 years to approve these projects. It does not mean compromising safety or environmental protection, because we know that we learn nothing about the environment and safety in year 15 of the study that we could not have learned in years 1, 2, or 3. The question is not about reducing our standards. It's about making those standards apply more quickly and getting our bureaucracy moving so that we can actually get these projects completed. And this is true across our entire economy. You look at, for example, our brilliant immigrants who come here as doctors, nurses, and engineers, but then are forced into low-wage, minimum wage jobs because they're prevented from getting their credentials to practice. Well, 43% of doctors from abroad are actually allowed to practice as doctors. Only 37% of nurses. We have provincial bureaucracies that prevent them from actually doing their jobs, the jobs for which they immigrated here and for which we approved their immigrant applications. And we need to incentivize our licensing bodies to speed up and give answers within 60 days rather than within 7 or 8 years. We need to remove the gatekeepers that prevent us from building housing. It takes 7 or 8 years to get permits to build housing. No wonder we have the fewest houses per capita of any country in the G7. A Poilievre government is going to incentivize municipalities to speed up and lower the cost of building permits for that too. And we're going to reward work. We have a labor shortage, and many of your companies have difficulty getting workers. Well, why do we have a labor shortage? There's obviously demographic reasons for it, but it's also that we punish work in this country. Our entire benefit and tax system is designed to discourage and punish people when they work. For example, a single mom earning $60,000 a year in Canada, who has 3 kids, earns an extra buck, she loses 80 cents. When they claw back her child benefit, because it's income tested, and then they pile on the income and payroll taxes, she loses 80% of the next dollar she earns. So if she's making 25 bucks an hour, she loses $20 of that wage, which leaves her with a $5 an hour wage. Nobody can be expected to work for $5 an hour. But this exists right across the income spectrum and across genders and regions of this country. And that is one of the reasons why we can't incentivize people to work more and achieve more. So a Poilievre government is going to assign a task force to reform our programs and cut our income and payroll taxes to make work pay so people bring home more of their paycheck. And we can incentivize more and better labor here in this country. That's really what we have to do. Turn this country loose by removing the gatekeepers and opening the gates of opportunity to anyone who's prepared to take a risk, invest their money, and work hard. They should be able to achieve their goals here in Canada, the most promising nation on earth. Right now, we rank 64th in the world for the time it takes to get a building permit. Why can't we be the fastest place in the OECD to get a building permit? What's holding us back? Why is it that in Canada, the average building permit takes 260 days, but in South Korea, it takes 28 days? They have the same safety standards, the same environmental standards. They do it in a month, and we do it in almost a year. We can beat the South Koreans. We can beat anybody we want. We have smart public servants. We have intelligent scientists and environmental experts who can protect our safety and our nature without slowing us down. And that's what that's my purpose. Let's unleash the full potential of our country. I was born of a 16-year-old unwed mother who put me up for adoption to 2 school teachers. And they always told me that it didn't matter where I came from. It mattered where I was going. It didn't matter who I knew, but what I could do. And that's the country I want my kids to inherit. I want every single person, no matter their means and no matter their origins, to have the chance to do exactly that. And by the way, that includes our First Peoples. First Nations must be the principal beneficiaries of the resource development that happens on their lands. And that's why my caucus has been consulting with leading First Nations minds on how we can reform the tax system to ensure that local First Nations communities keep more of the revenues that are generated on their lands and that less of those revenues make their way to Ottawa. That would mean more dollars in the communities under the control of First Nations to protect to protect their social safety net, to deliver their own services, and to take control of their own economic decisions. We want to give people back control of their lives in the freest nation on earth, become the world leader in mining the minerals of the next generation of economic production. So let's get busy, let's get it done, and let's bring it home. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much again to the Honourable Pierre Poilievre for speaking here today, and of course for sharing his thoughts on unleashing Canada's true potential.